Hello, welcome. I'm Stacy Holmes, Executive Director with the Frost Place. Thank you for joining us here to celebrate recent book releases from three poets, each with a different connection to the Frost Place. We'll be treated to a reading from them in just a moment, but first I wanted to mention a few things. We are recording this, so we ask the audience to stay muted. And then I wanted to let you know about a few upcoming events. We're celebrating Robert Frost Day at the Frost Place in Franconia, New Hampshire on Sunday, July 6th. If you'll be in the area, you're invited to join us for an afternoon open house, which will include free admission to the museum, a poetry workshop hosted by poet and Frost Place board member Neil Shepard, followed by a poetry reading. And we're honored to host some truly incredible poets for this. Ellen Bryant Voigt, Michael Collier, our 2025 Dartmouth Poet in Residence, Nathan Xavier Osorio, and our 1985 Poet in Residence, Kathy Fagan. Kathy is also teaching at our online poetry seminar, August 3rd through 7th, along with Deborah Paredes and Patrick Donnelly. Kathy's class is fully subscribed, but a handful of spaces remain with Deborah and Patrick. Then in September, poet Jody Hollander is joining us in Franconia to host a couple of workshops. On Saturday, September 6th, reading and writing Robert Frost, and on Sunday, September 13th, writing Nature in Place. Please check our website, frostplace.org, to read more about those events, and to register. Now I will hand it over to Patrick Donnelly, who is the Frost Place Program Director and longtime Director of the Poetry Seminar. Patrick's new book, Willowhammer, is available from Four-Way Books. Patrick?
Thank you, Stacy. We're happy tonight to celebrate some new books in the Frost Place community. I'll introduce each poet separately before they read. And first, I'll introduce myself and then put on my reader hat. I've been director of the Poetry Seminar since 2011 and program director since 2024. I love working with Stacy and our board and program committee to bring poetry writing instruction and community to hundreds of people over the years. I'm grateful for such wonderful colleagues. At the center of this new book, Willowhammer, is a poem sequence about a crime that one of my family members committed. The speaker is an ex-Catholic seminarian, a stand-in for me, who doesn't really want to think about this crime, so he tries to disappear into etymology and Latin poetry, Ovid, Catullus, Horace, etc. But this does not work because their poems are full of this quite specific crime. This part of the book is an exploration of not wanting to know. The speaker is weak in that way, but also about being forced to know and to carry knowledge. The sequence is called Scenes from Latin Poetry, and I'll read some poems for that. Willow flower. You know how you can know some things, but forget you know until it's time to remember? Mom met her third husband, Billy, when she was a teacher helping convicts get their GEDs, and he was incarcerated at that prison. When he was paroled, they wed in the backyard with the petunias, plighted their troth, as they said, while I sang a song, lyrics from the Song of Solomon. A garden enclosed is my sister, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. And then Mom brought this Billy person into the house with my actual sister, who at 14 was skinny as a willow in flower. 8 years older, I was far away, gone, useless, just the three of them in that house. Billy had looks and strength, a crew cut and a drawl, and my sister was a teenage votress of chaste Diana, goddess of a whole moon of not wanting it. Billy chased her, and as in all the old stories, she ran. Oh, swear not by the moon, the inconstant moon. But my sister was constant. She constantly didn't want his goat breath on her neck. She'd rather die, and after that she would try several times. Later, Billy said it didn't happen, a thing the gods always say. And Mom said if it happened, my sister should have run faster or changed into a tree. Later, Mom said she never said this, would never say such a thing, said they were both drinking, said she didn't know, said about herself that she was a terrible, terrible mother, inviting us to contradict her. My sister didn't tell me for 20 years. I didn't know. That year I had been at a seminary, for fuck's sake, chaste votary of pale Jesus, while my sister ran away, lived on the street, and I didn't know, didn't hear when Mom and Billy broke up. And when he went back to prison for holding up a Circle K, I was mopping the marble chapel and studying Latin. Da mihi multa basia mea bella puella, translating Catullus for a test. Da, imperative case. He commanded the girl to give him hundreds of kisses. So many, a bewildering number, to shake everyone into confusion. No jealous person could touch him because no one would ever know the true number. After 40 years, having excluded the word rape from a certain poem, I asked myself, do I know anyone who has been raped? It took me a moment. Billy, a boy's name, like Billy the Kid, diminutive of William, Germanic, meaning helmet of desire. The word Billy in Urdu means pussy, pussycat, shaft, and preventer. People want to forget that the names of God include the delayer, the subduer, the compeller, the distressor, constrictor, humiliator, abaser, avenger, the taker of life. Baby, I've seen angels drive the wind. The tale of Murasaki. Genji had been away for an undetermined while, but one night while Murasaki's mom was cashiering at the truck stop, 7 to 11, Genji came back to the house where Murasaki was alone. He peered through the blinds, circling the house, pounding on the doors and windows, howling, "I only married your mother to get sex with you." Certain he'd break in, Murasaki fled out the back and hid in the scented hollow of a juniper until Genji reached in and pulled her out by her hair. Juniper, from Latin, is compounded from roots, meaning to create and youth, evergreen. The tree's tiny fleshy cones, crushed and mixed with alcohol, will cause a fetus to abort. A correspondence. The Tyra Empress leapt into the sea after putting her warming stone and inkstone inside her kimono. Using a rake, the enemy pulled her out of the water by her hair. I gripped my sister and brushed her hair hard on a certain day when we were alone. Mom would leave the hospital. When she returned to the house, when the key turned in the door, every hair on our heads would be perfect, numbered, known. When my sister and I talk now, it's to compare what we can't remember. For instance, each other. Where was the other in the house all those years? Where was she on the day, etc.? Where was I when, where was everyone? Could the poem be in English? I remember a poet friend asking in response to one of my obscurities. But consider, this speaker may be trying to cajole the reader to ask what kind of person, in what state of mind, retreats from English, or rather blurts some English out, then runs away, unable to stay in a relationship with other people's pain in the vulgar language common to them all. This is because there's a monkish room beckoning to him from the 12th century, where he might talk to himself about various things he's read. There, the light is latticed, and after he's read the poem in Provençal, he might close his eyes and rest. Don't pretend your comforts are more defensible. Don't pretend your weakness is easier to forgive. Billy's tattoos. Naked girl in a martini glass, a peacock covering some older obscenity, clipper ship in full sail, cherries, biceps, shin, chest, ass. He walked around in his boxers a lot. When my sister was 14, Mom told her sex with Billy was the best of her life. The Cloak and Dagger tattoo website says traditional ship tattoos symbolize new journeys, beginnings, home, good luck, a way of life, direction, bravery, honor, or even a troubled past. The Martini Girl was captioned man's ruin. Darwin wrote of the peacock, the sexual struggle is of two kinds. In the one, it is between individuals of the same sex, generally the males, in order to drive away or kill their rivals, the females remaining passive. Whilst in the other, the struggle is likewise between the individuals of the same sex in order to excite or charm those of the opposite sex, generally the females, which no longer remain passive but select the more agreeable partners. But let's talk about those cherries on his ass. Let's talk about how my heart fluttered up the 2 or 3 times I ever saw him. Addendum. When willowy, unrequited, polygonal Lytton Strachey was asked, "What would you do if a Hun tried to rape your sister?" he answered, "I would attempt to interpose my own body." I tried Google, but the specific crimes of anyone incarcerated before the 1990s are hidden from my cursor. I'd have to travel to the archive, sit in a dark room with a microfiche. Billy Chester Hall, 0 results. Show yourself, you devil. Show yourself. Every night before bed, the monks at Gethsemane Abbey in Kentucky turned to face a stained glass window showing the Virgin Mary shooting milk from her breast into the mouth of Saint Bernard. The word metaphor comes from Greek and Proto-Indo-European roots, meaning over, across, plus to carry, and also to bear children. And then the monks sang at her, Monstra te esse matrem, show yourself to be a mother, imperative case. a command not to prove virginity. Mary was already famous as a hortus conclusus, a garden closed, but maternity. But how does a person prove they're a mother? If you think about it, St. Bernard must have opened his mouth. Planned Parenthood invented FRIES, a memory model for consent. Freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, specific, which must seem unforgivable to a person who longs above all things to forget. Some versions say the Virgin's milk hit St. Bernard in the eyes, causing him to see things that had been hidden from other men. I didn't consent to wanting to look, so monster, don't show yourself. Keep Billy, ye gods, hidden in whatever world he now inhabits, because what kind of dangerous would he still be if I found him? To me, I mean. In life, he had a gun. At this distance, can he hold a gun to my mind? Wizards make a hand sign for avert that looks from a distance like a gun. Point at the thing you want to fuck completely off with index and middle fingers together, thumb and other fingers circled underneath, and pop, away it goes. Only, did that ever work? In what world? How do you prove harmlessness? It's possible there's still a violent smear of Billy's atoms somewhere on the world. If I were a wizard, would it be better to bind him or disperse him? Questionnaire. Asked why he didn't protect my sister from Billy, our real dad said, everybody goes through hard things. That's just life. I shot somebody in Korea. Here is a curated list of rapes in Ovid. Alcyone turned into a kingfisher. Anaxarete turned into a stone. Arethusa turned into a lake. Callisto turned into a bear, then some stars. Cyone dissolved into a pool of tears. Daphne turned into a tree. Dryope, a tree. Io, a cow. Leucothoe, Nyctimene, Syrinx, frankincense, hoot owl, hollow reeds that rattle in the wind. Rattle, tittle, tattle when people are trying to rest. Why dredge up the past? For once, can't we just have some peace and quiet? It was Gia Tolentino who said, I think a lot of people in this world have turned into a tree and then turned back again. Palindrome. Finally, like and unlike that girl who begged any elemental that would listen to thicken her body so that God wouldn't chase her anymore. Every day this year, my body grew grosser and more rank. No God will ever wear what I leave in his hair. In his hair, no God will ever wear what I leave. My body every day this year grew grosser and more rank. So the God wouldn't chase her anymore. Her body thickened. Any elemental would have listened when that girl begged. Like and unlike, finally. Now I remember my little sister that was, little willow of glass, upon whom he laid his hammer hands. Thank you for listening. Award-winning poet Rachel Richardson is an indispensable member of the Frost Place board and also chairs our program committee. We're extremely grateful for her guidance. Please welcome Rachel reading from her new book, Smother, from W.W. Norton and Company.
Thank you, Patrick. That is a hard transition for me. That was such a powerful poem or reading. Thanks so much for all of you, or to all of you, for being here. I am delighted to be reading with this trio and to be here representing the Frost Place and the broader community around it. I joined the board a year ago, and it's been a lovely new community, virtually and in a very physical home place, to be able to participate in poetry with you all, in that way, and also to be in a sort of a legacy of poetry that comes through Frost and comes through these very particular layered, multidimensional, like parts of relationships to place, right? Parts of the country that my life has passed through as well. I am in California now, and this is a very California book that I'm going to read to you from, but I lived in New Hampshire as a college student and was taught by Cleopatra Mathis, whose echoes and whose influences you will hear in some of these poems, as well as through her, or from her, through her, Frost and some other poets. This is a book that tries to sort of pay its tributes to other poets. So I hope you hear that. I'll start with the first poem in the book, which is called Creek Fire. And I'll just say very briefly, the book is written over a period of about 8 years, 2017 to, 16 to 23-ish, 7-8 years. And during which I lived in the Bay Area, which is where I grew up and where I've spent most of my life, in a series of summers in which we had record-breaking wildfires, these sort of mega fires that really have changed our sense of the landscape in which we lived and changed the ecosystems around us in pretty dramatic ways. And so this first poem, Creek Fire, you all might have paid attention to this moment across the country and across the world, because this was the day in which the photos from our fires hit the international news. It was the day that we call the Orange Day in the Bay Area, where the sun basically didn't come out ever, and the sky stayed orange all day because of the effects of particulate matter and smoke across the greater Bay Area, sort of lingering below so that UV rays couldn't penetrate. It was an extremely strange experience, and everyone was taking pictures of it because no one could quite figure out how to articulate what it felt like to live on Mars, to live in this place that was said it didn't have the sort of basic characteristics of our planet anymore. So here's my attempt to describe that. Creek Fire. The dark comes in on my girl's 10th birthday. Fire-bearing crow feathers. No, ash. It comes with its big breath, sun without light, cold morning in the surrounding counties, everyone blinking, looking around, phones lifted to the horizon. And the next poem I'll read is called Domestic, and this one pays its tribute to Frost directly, as well as to Elizabeth Bishop, some of my teachers in language. And those of you who know Frost will probably know what poem I'm referring to, but I'll tell you anyway. It's Out, and I'm referring to Bishop's In the Waiting Room, which were two poems that I studied as an undergraduate in New Hampshire, and made a big impression on me, and sort of bubbled up through my subconscious as I was having this experience and writing this poem. Domestic. Yesterday, as he was hacking down the passion flower vine, my husband, whom I directed to do this, brutal creature that I have become, destroyer of the purple spiked flower and the fritillary's nectar, who put the power whacker in his hands, its handle bright orange so that it could not get lost in the weeds, its toothed blades heft of gas power in the palm. Yesterday, as he was doing my bidding on a ladder against the house, gently pulling, then buzzing one tendril after another, there was a sudden cry. Not Frost's rueful laugh, not Bishop's O of pain, but the high clucking trill of a mother squirrel as two pink bodies tumbled to the dirt. In the tangle of shorn vines, they wriggled and squeaked, hairless, blind, shining as if oiled, as the hidden mother scolded, or so it sounded, even at her most desperate, trilling the repeating alarm. And my husband staggered back from them, hand over mouth, then retreated inside and returned with a box. And I, at my great distance, trowel poised over the blueberry pots, thought of telling him to keep it quiet so the kids wouldn't hear and angle for a pet. I thought of having to bottle feed the things now that they'd have our human smell, of driving them in crosstown traffic to the wildlife rescue, of the inconvenience of their living, while my husband scooped them up in his gentle hands, then climbed the ladder with the box and set them back behind the green curtain of vine, in with the torn warrior's flag they'd made for a bed, up against the warm wall of our house, in the nest for the mother to take them back, and then waited to see if she would have them. So the book deals with this sequence of fires. It also deals with the fact of raising children and trying to give them an experience of the wilderness in these years, trying to raise children to be outdoors and to have a life of exploring and of having some sense of being in nature while we are experiencing air that is dangerous, right? And then the double whammy of the danger of the air from the smoke and then the danger of the air from COVID, and just all of these ways in which suddenly being a child seemed very, very difficult, and raising a child seemed very complicated to think about sort of what future are we bringing them into, and how are we telling them to behave in it. So this is a poem called Tamarack Fire, which is about a fire. It was not one of the biggest fires in California, but it was sort of an unexpected fire that they hadn't that Cal Fire had not thought would grow, and so they didn't fight it particularly. They thought it would put itself out. It was in the forest, but it was near a wilderness camp that my kids were at, and then it grew. And we in California, who have become totally anxious about air quality, parents, deal with our anxieties by uploading the air quality, minute to minute levels on our apps, right? Because this is what we do. It's not a good way to relieve anxiety or control the situation, but somehow it lets us think that we know at least what's going on. So that's what I'm referring to with the circles on the map here. It's the little air quality sensors that you can see all over the map. Tamarack Fire. I upload again and again the little circles on the map representing their air, my children in their tents, cursing when red turns to purple, praying to the God I pray to, which is no God, which is the vast smoky sky, for orange, then yellow. Let me be so bold as to pray for green. Children in their tents are not a metaphor. The fire burning 30 miles away is not a metaphor. What will reach them and what will not reach them is not the question. I am 150 miles away, 3 hours, 18 minutes drive time in current traffic. I sit, then stand, then sit. They're probably in the rec hall now, playing board games so as not to tax their lungs. The fire was not considered a danger when it ignited on a rocky hilltop, and so it was left to burn. Wind, heat, the big empty sky drew a path into the forest. Okay, I'll shift gears a little bit. So the other thing you're probably hearing here is there's a lot of technology in these poems, a lot of phones. I live in the Bay Area, and there's a lot of tech around us. Although we all live with this, right? And especially after in the process of COVID and sort of moving everything online, including children's schooling, that became just a much more immersed, experience for us and part of our lives daily. So I'll read about a poem about Google. This is a poem called Questions, and it's actually the first poem that I wrote for the book. I wrote it in 2017 after a dear friend of mine, a poet named Nina Ellen Riggs, had just died from cancer. So this is a poem that is dedicated to her. Questions. If there's one true thing, it's that Google will make money off us, no matter what. If we want to know what percentage of America is white, as it seems we do, what percentage of the population is gay, as it seems we do, what percentage of the earth is water, the engine is ready for our desire. The urgent snow is everywhere, is a line by Edna St. Vincent Millay, and many have asked, apparently, where am I right now? Also, when will I die? Do you love me? Maybe up there, generating high cost per click, but not as high as how to make pancakes. What time is it in California? So many things I wanted to ask you now that you're gone and your texts bounce back to me undeliverable. Praise to the goddess of the internet search who returns with her basket of grain, 67,000 helpful suggestions to everything we request. How to solve a Rubik's Cube, what to do when you're bored, how old is the earth, how to clear cache, what animal am I, why do we dream, where are you now, come back. So one exercise I gave myself, which turned out to be a really fun thing to do, and I will share it with all of you as a potential exercise for fun, is to try to make a cento out of famous lines from poems that I liked or that I thought were sort of recognizable as sort of as canonical, right? But to change the central noun in them, in every one of the lines that I chose, to be a word that I chose to sort of to create a kind of theme through the poem. So I chose the word was smoke that I chose, and I have adjusted all of these lines to be about smoke. So this is called Smoke Cento. This is also, it's sort of poetry trivia or something. You'll see how many lines you know. The smoke wades through black jade. Smoke knows why the caged bird sings. Everyone forgets the smoke also flew. The smoke too sings America. Smoke is elegy to what it signifies. Smoke is the thing with feathers. Smoke loved the earth so much she wanted to stay forever. The smoke diverged in a yellow wood. Smoke kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow. But I know too that the smoke is involved in what I know. So my answer to the elegy, to my poems about my friend Nina, who had died, became these poems about my living women friends, which I titled after a poet who I love, C.D. Wright. She has a series of poems in an early book of hers called Girlfriend Poem, and I borrowed that title to write poems to living women who I admire and whose friendship has sustained me. So this is a poem to my friend Renee, who was my sort of co-pod parent during the pandemic. So this is about sort of parenting together. And you will hear how we got through a year of no school. Girlfriend poem, Renee. When we had no school, we made a school. Maps and Senate contests pasted on my wall, and the timeline of American history the way we wanted it told on yours. The kids walked between our houses, and you made bean soup, and I made yogurt, and we delivered them by child courier, your day or my day to be teacher, and you yelled at the kids, and I yelled at the kids, and we apologized. And I forget which one of us thought up a whole new currency to teach them economics, and whose day was the day the sky stayed orange and we broke into the school playground because breathing smoke on the monkey bars was worth it. And we read about Ma Ingalls on the prairie in 7 months of winter and little Kamala Harris integrating our kids' own school. And we tried to remember our luck in the world as you made sourdough or I did, and I made leaf etchings or you did. And we packed the kids into the van to the beach to get off grid when the election came. We camped among the shorn native grasses, mowed flat to prevent wildfire by the cold ocean, and we didn't know how the votes were being tallied and who would run the country and sign bills into law and how those laws would treat our children's small bodies and our own. And then all our flashlights died and the dark came down fast, but the kids stayed in the ocean until last light, their clothes plastered to their skin in salt water and sand until they delivered themselves to us, expecting us to peel them free and find them something dry, our own clothes off our bodies, and build a fire and bring them to it, and then lie on top of the picnic table in our sleeping bags and identify the stars. And you did, or I did, or we named enough possible constellations with confidence that the kids believed we knew. And our nylon tents were our den, and our children tumbled and bit, and we wanted school back and these creatures out of the house. And you know all these things as well as I do, but we are forgetting already. And that's why I'm saying this. I'm writing it down because if you and I know anything, we know it goes. And I'll end with this one on a little bit of an up note. This is called After Fire, and it's about a project that I got to be part of to replant trees on the site of a burn. It's actually the city of Berkeley, which is where I live, has a public family camp that it's owned for 100 years. And it's been the site of family camps, of family camping and sort of summer activity for the residents of Berkeley for 100 years, and it burned in the Rim Fire in 2013. And this is in right near Yosemite. And so it felt like this really literal example of how childhood has changed, right? Childhood is gone in a certain way for the next generation of kids because literally 98 tent cabins burned down, and the rec hall. And but we rebuilt it. The city rebuilt it, and so my kids got to go back to, we've gone there for 3 years now, and we got to take part before it opened again in this tree planting. And a bunch of Berkeley families came up and participated in this together. So this is called After Fire. The kids cradled baby trees in their arms, plastic conical pots with the starts of incense cedars and ponderosas sprouting upward, tiny shivers of needles spurting from thin beginnings of branch. And we trudged up the hillside with paper packets of nutrients, tree tea, stuffed in our jeans pockets to toss into the planting holes. The rains were coming. Everything felt lucky. We shuddered in the cold, clear air like saplings, our fingers numbing in flimsy garden gloves. The camp's engineer shouted instructions to our assembled group, space them 6 feet apart all over the hill. To feed the roots, scavenge for biochar left from the burn. Mulch them in a blanket of leaves to protect from the early snows. The kids carried trowels. We parents dug and pierced orange flags into the dirt at the planting sites to mark our labor, the starts of new sprouts, this imagined shade for our children's children. We stood over them, mothers over young, gods for our brief moment, remembering the engineer had said it's reasonable to hope that a few might make it. Thanks.
So wonderful, Rachel. Thank you very much. Poet and translator Yuki Tanaka won our 2018 Chapbook Fellowship with Seance in Daylight, selected by Sandra Lim. We followed Yuki's rise with a lot of joy. Please welcome Yuki reading from his first full-length collection, Chronicle of Drifting, from Copper Canyon Press.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you to the First Play, Stacy, Patrick, and Rachel for allowing me to be part of this wonderful reading series. And thank you everyone for coming out on a Friday night. Thank you. Yes, as Patrick said, I was at the Frost Place as a fellow in 2018, and I also stayed in Frost's actual house for a week. and I remember how cold it was, and it was really a perfect place to read a lot of Frost poems, especially Old Man's Winter Night, and it was a great place. Um, and yes, and I'm going to read from my first length collection. It's called Chronicle of Drifting, and I will start with a poem called Homecoming. And in the back of my head, I think Frost was somewhere in this and in this poem. Frost was one of the first poets I whose work I memorized when I was studying English, and Road Not Taken and Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Those poems are always with me. So I'm going to start with this poem, Homecoming. In the heart of a forest, a boy leans on a light-lashed horse. He is not crying, the horse unhurt, just as a husk is unhurt. Lost in the forest, stroking the frosted skin of its muscular neck, he looks far ahead, someone waiting. He thinks, make our journey last a little longer. Say it was a small, beautiful town. He was loved by friends. No, he says, he had only the horse made of white threads. Pull them out, and the horse would lose its strength and collapse into a man. The idea is comforting. He could tell the horse, who is now a man, he is tired and cannot go on. The word frost is in this poem, so I'm kind of that part is kind of endearing to me. um, and I'm going to read the title poem, Chronicle of Drifting, which has 14 sections. And I wrote this sequence during the pandemic, and we couldn't really go out of our houses, and what I did was to take a walk at night in Tokyo. By the way, I live in Tokyo, and I took a walk. I would take a walk at night in a city, and I would try to, observe things and come back and take diaries, and that diary became part of my kind of a source of my this title poem, Chronicle of Drifting, and it's in prose poems. So I'm going to read a couple of sections from this. The first section, I'll start with the first section, A Chronicle of Drifting. If only the sky were kind enough to lend me his blue coat. I bought a piece of tuna at the fish market. The owner's apron was so clean, he must have one for greeting, one for gutting. The fringe of his right thumbnail a red crescent. I gave him 2 500 yen coins beaded with my sweat, and he wiped them on his chest. Summer is coming to a close, autumn ahead, trailing orange hair. Walking down the alley lined with small Buddha statues, I was reminded of a friend who would pray at night. She knelt and prayed to a picture of her altar on her laptop so hard, she cried for the health of her parents. I thought, dark-haired cloud with beautiful rain. That's the opening section. And so a lot of these sections have a speaker walking around in the city and seeing things. So it's kind of in the tradition of the flaneur. Um, I'm going to read another section. And this one, the speaker is traveling. Trip to Kyoto. I wear a mask and read Snow Country on the train, feeling disinfected and happy. The alert is set off and the train stops in the middle of a rice field. The jingling of my apartment keys in my pocket seems to say, "This is our home. Where's the door?" A man sitting opposite me takes a banana from his briefcase and peels and eats and keeps on reading. Outside, a sun-freckled farmer glances at us, then keeps watch over a bonfire, where he must be burning leaves to fertilize the land. The man opposite me is mesmerized by the farmer. When he wipes the window with his finger, the field enters his forehead, leaving him aflame. I stay empty, a blue outline. one more from the sequence. This is obviously taking place in Tokyo. A gray high-rise at night, all windows lit, except two. They huddle like a pair of dreaming panthers. Christmas song in the air. A top-hatted boy hums a tune while handing out pocket tissues. I say no thanks, but Merry Christmas. His breath is white, feathery. The cold air is chiseling me into a better person. A month ago, I cut my fingertip, sliced off a piece of skin, small as a grain of rice, and it has grown back, which makes me happy. I buy a meat bun on a street corner. When I break it in half, I turn around to see the bun seller, but he's already out of reach. In another life, we could be mist together, bodiless, feelingless, making our city glisten. A glass bakery with no one in it. Laughter of someone I will never meet. I walk along the river, thinking I too can flow, mirroring the blue bells. So that's it from the sequence. And I'm going to read a couple more poems, two poems. This one is called Obad, and Obad is the kind of genre where lovers must part at daybreak. You know, they spend the night and now they must part at daybreak. But then my Obad is the speaker's all by himself, but somehow from this situation, there are more people coming out from his imagination. I sit on a chair, and the chair touches me back. According to my chair, I have two hips and bones inside them hard as peach pits. The femurs connected to the pelvis lead to the kneecaps. I have kneecaps. In the ancient past of my village, people used them as drinking cups. A boy sipping sake from the kneecap of grandfather, whose kneecap is bigger than grandmother's. She helps her son detach the kneecap from the leg and wash it in a stream. White of the kneecap, she thinks, is trembling like a moon. Funny it smells sweeter than the knee of the man she remembers. When he was alive, he wasn't much of a man. Thin, boneless, his shoulder soft as a berry-bearing ivy. Funny he seems more alive now, this trembling bone under the cold water. Um, So a lot of my poems, I don't think I have a lot of happy poems in it, but I was trying to find one to end it, but maybe this one is closest I could get with a happy poem genre. So it's called Evidence of Nocturne. This is going to be the last poem I read. Evidence of Nocturne. Whatever is singing above, come down. Drink a lake for my eyes. Fever and azaleas, both thriving on the shore. Don't eat when your mouth is dry. Even a scrap of bread makes you bleed. Withdraw. No lion devours the bones of a beloved. Tonight, after rain, I'd like you to fly through these irises, your blue mustache, blue cheeks infected with sky. You can be frail here. Between the clouds, a moonlit plain, 1,000 houses to be washed away. This pile of wood wished to be a stairway, but couldn't. Will you pretend to climb it? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yuki. That was very beautiful. Does anybody have any questions for any of us before we part for the night? You can either write it into the chat and I'll read it aloud, or just speak up. That's fine to not have any questions.
How about that? Can I say something?
There is one. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hi there. This is Cynthia, and I just want to tell you this. I, Pat, first of all, the entire reading was absolutely wonderful, and it's only 5 o'clock here in Arizona, so and you'd have to know I'm blown away. Literally, that's it. That's it for the evening. There's nothing else that can do nothing can top this. And by top I mean what a journey. It was so incredibly powerful that I don't know how to describe how how much it meant to me. I must just add that, Patrick, after your reading of your poems, it's 102 here in the shade, and I was so chilled by your reading, your pieces, that I had to go outside onto my back patio in the heat. And I could not unchill myself during Rachel's reading, which was wonderful. But I still stayed that chilled and overwhelmed. Amazing. Yeah. So
Thank you for saying that. We all deserve a drink after this.
all of you, yes, everyone. Cheers to everyone and a toast, because everyone's work was really beautiful. It was such a joy to be here. So I'll sign off here. So or mute myself.
Like we got a question for Yuki from Blackbird.
Do we in the chat?
Yeah, can Yuki describe his poetry education / early reading / influences?
Oh, thank you, Black, for this question. So I didn't really describe my background at all during the reading because I was so nervous. But I studied in the U.S. From university on, and I did my MFA at the Mitchell Center for Writers at UT Austin. So I lived in Austin for like 3 years or so. Before that, I was studying English literature, and some of my favorite early like poets were like people like Keats, Hopkins. I loved the Romantics a lot. Wordsworth, and then Gerald Manley Hopkins, and all these. I really loved the musicality of the English language. And among contemporary poets, I really love. I think Rachel mentioned C.D. Wright, and she was one of my favorite poets, and also Lin Hejinian, who was a big influence on my prose poems. And yeah, I can go on forever, but yeah, but thank you for asking, Blackbird.
Yuki, I wanted to tell you that I struck up a conversation with a Japanese man on the Yamanote line
Oh,
when I was in Tokyo. And when I told him that I worked at one of Robert Frost's houses, he started to recite a Frost poem to me.
wow.
It was so wonderful. That he had memorized a Frost poem, but it made me realize that Frost is known there. He's maybe the big American poet, which is interesting.
Yes, that's kind of amazing. I mean, most people probably wouldn't recognize Frost's name, but I think that for some like poetry lovers, Frost is a kind of a quintessential American poet, even in here. So yeah, that's quite
Right,
wonderful.
right.
Mm.
Anything else? Please, if you're looking for a summer poetry conference, consider the poetry seminar, August 3 through 7. Applications are still open, and Deborah Paredes and I would love to work with you in our workshops. Every morning we have craft dialogues or talks with the participants. We have 3 hours of workshop every afternoon where we give focused attention to participant poems, and every night one of the faculty members or one of our guests read, and on the last night, our participants read. And it's always a wonderful 4 days. So I invite you to join us this year or any year, and check out our other programming. We have craft classes online in the fall and in the spring, both. If there's nothing else, thank you so much to our readers for reinforcing community and sharing such beautiful work with us.
Thank you all for being here.
All right. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you to our
Good
wonderful
night.
readers.
Thank you.